Hello handpanners, welcome back to another handpan tutorial. This week we're going to take a look at the basics, the very basics. It's something that I haven't dedicated a video to yet, but it's very important to dedicate time to, so I thought I would do that. Now there are videos of other people explaining this as well online, and I recommend that you check that out because everybody's different, everybody's body works in a different way. But the aim of this is to figure out a way for you that feels good in striking your handpan, in your posture, in getting a good flow and preventing injury. Before I do though, upside down t-shirt. Here is my new merch, my new very crinkled merch. It is the lyrics from my song, The Earth Teaches. So if you'd like to support me and support this channel, then I do have t-shirts available in different styles, not just this one. I also have stickers and that kind of thing. And I have other t-shirts that you might have seen me wearing before in previous videos available on there. So I'll put a link in the description. Anyway, before we even look at strike, let's look at posture. This is the actual angle at which your handpan is resting on your lap or on your stand. So in general, you want your pan to be, well, kind of at this height. This is a really good height for me. I've got it on my lap, and when I play, I can have my arm pretty much parallel to the ground. Usually my elbows tend to drop a little bit, but what's most important is that you can comfortably get your wrist high above the pan. So I've got plenty of space here between my hand and the pan itself when I play, right? There's loads of room there, there's like a hand's width. And I can then just flop my hand really gently onto the pan. It's not like a real effort to strike from here. So often I see a lot of beginners playing from really down low. This is going to cause a lot of tension over time. So try to avoid this and just lift it a little bit so that you can relax. Now when you lift, be careful not to lift from here, from the shoulder, because that's where you're going to bring in a lot of tension and a lot of pain down the line. So it's lifting the elbow, and it might feel a little bit strange at first when you play, but this is just about building up some of those new muscles if you haven't played an instrument before. But you do generally want to be quite relaxed. Notice as well that my spine is nice and straight. I'm not laying back in my seats like this. I'm not leaning really far forward either. So if you're somebody who plays with a stand, I don't have a stand. This is a standing stand, so I can't demonstrate, but try to get your handpan at a comfortable height, not too low down that you have to lean over, and not too far away that you have to lean forward to reach it. So ideally, a stand where you can actually get your legs around it would be great, so that you can bring the handpan as close towards your body as possible. Now a little gap is actually pretty good. It's a good thing because it means that you can stretch your hands out a little bit more, so you've got a really nice comfortable shape with your arms. Obviously when you play it on your lap, sometimes things can get a little bit chicken wing over down here, but if you've got a tiny bit of distance, not loads, just a little bit of distance, if you're playing with a stand, then you've got a bit more openness, which is really good because it gives you more room to get that flow. And speaking of openness and flow, you might also notice when I play that my pan is not completely level, and it's definitely not tipped towards me. So when I'm playing, I actually have my pan kind of angled slightly away from me. It's like sloping away. Kind of like if you were playing djembe or something like this. And what this does is it opens these notes below, these notes closer to your body. So if I'm angling the pan like this, it's really difficult to reach these notes, and I have to kind of contort in some strange shapes. And I have to bend my wrist in an unnatural way. But if I just angle it ever so slightly this way, not so much that it's going to slip from my lap or from my stand, but just ever so slightly, so that I can open up this space and I've got all of this room to play. It means you can avoid all of these horrible twisted shapes, right? You can keep that wrist nice and raised. I also recommend that you regularly check in with your body as you play. Check in with your shoulders, check in with your feet. Now I often find when I'm playing that I completely forget about my feet because I mean, why would I be thinking about my feet when I'm playing handpan? I'm thinking about my hands, right? But sometimes I'll be playing and playing and playing, and suddenly, like, I'll notice that my toes are really clenched because I'm practicing something really intensely or whatever. So just having a little bit of body awareness is really important to make sure you're checking in with wherever there is tension. So I recommend that you just take a moment before you play to make sure that everything is aligned where it should be, that you've loosened any kind of creaks, any tension spots, and you're ready to go. Warming up is also incredibly important. So before I play, and I have to, especially in this weather in the winter, it's winter now in the UK, my hands get really cold really, really easily. In fact, they're quite cold now. So I like to give them a wiggle, I like to give them a rotate. And my favourite thing to do is to just shake it out, because it really loosens everything up. And sometimes I find if I'm practicing something and I just can't get it, if I step back and spend 2 minutes just having a little shake, having a little roll out, when I come back, suddenly it feels so much easier. So warming up is really important. Give your fingers a little bit of a massage to get the blood pumping there, your hands too. It's really important to give your hands and your arms as well lots of love again. Really wake it up and get everything moving. Especially if you're noticing that you're not playing in the way that you like. If you know, yesterday you could play something really, really well, and today you arrive and suddenly you can't do it. Oftentimes it's not a problem up here, it's a problem down here. Your brain knows exactly what to do, but your body's just not quite doing it. And the reason could be that you're not warmed up. So, you know, whatever little exercises you like to do to get things moving, really important. So the strike itself then, you can use when you begin any finger that feels comfortable for you. When I started, played a lot with my thumb and a lot with my middle finger. I still do. I also play a lot with my pointer finger, and I'm starting to use my ring finger a lot more now as well. Different teachers have different approaches. For me, it depends on context. It depends on what I'm playing. For instance, if I've got a really complex melody happening over a groove, and it means that I have to, you know, jump around the pan a little bit, and the groove itself is complex as well, I might need to use different fingers to do different things. And if I'm reaching from this side to this side, I might use my thumb here and my ring here, so that I don't have to reach as far as if I use my finger for both, right? So it all depends on context, but to begin with, I recommend just having a go with every finger, see what feels good. Now in the strike itself, don't strike it like a drum. Not a drum. Strike it like it's delicate and like it's hot. So the sound really is all in the upward motion. So you're relaxing your hand down onto the pan. Remember those raised wrists that we talked about earlier? You relax down onto the pan, and I do bring my finger into it a little bit. So I'm raising whichever finger is striking, but not so much that I'm tensing. Right? I'm just preparing it. But more than anything, I'm kind of just relaxing onto the pan. And then I'm bouncing immediately upwards, like I just touched, you know, a flame or the hot plate on the stove. And it's this upwards motion that is allowing the pan to ring. If you keep your finger down for too long, it deadens the sound because the metal can't vibrate. But if you let it jump, then you really let that sing. So it's all in the upwards motion. You don't need to hit it hard. Sometimes when people aren't getting the sound they want, they hit harder. But in doing so, actually, you're making it more difficult for yourself, and it's not going to sound any better. It's the light touch and the bounce that counts. And to practice this, starting with the note lowest, the biggest note in front of you, or the two biggest notes either side, you can just play up and down the scale, really focusing on relaxing onto the handpan, right? And play with different fingers. My middle, my ring, my pinky, Yeah, sometimes using fingers you're not used to really forces you to check in with your wrist and your hand motion, which is a good thing. You need to use the wrist and your hand to kind of help your fingers out a little bit. So it's not just your fingers relying on doing all of the work, because if you rely on your fingers, they'll get tired really quickly, right? So bringing the wrist and the hand into it too, just to even out and to spread out the workload a little bit. Another thing to note as well is that your notes are on the handpan at a slight angle, right? So if you're not using any specific technique in your playing, any specific type of strike, which we can look at in another video, then in general, you want to be striking kind of from the angle that the note is at. So rather than coming up from above like this and moving your wrist like this in this unnatural motion, you want to be moving from the angle. So imagine you've got like a beam of light beaming from each note, like Star Wars or something, right? And it's all, I don't know, in my brain they're all different colours because they're all different notes. And it looks really pretty, actually. Anyway, so when you strike, you want your hand to remain in that beam of light. Don't break it by going up like this. Stay in that beam, right? And your bounce wants to be in that direction too. That's the general aim. And that's how you're going to get the purest tone. I also use a very, very small surface area of my finger. I like to use the very tip. And I strike right here where the tone field starts to curve in to the dimple. I'm not playing in the dimple, not playing right on the outside. We can do those things to achieve different textures and sounds, which again we can look at another time. But for the most part, you want to be aiming for that sweet spot. Every handpan is different, but my sweet spot in all my instruments, I think, pretty much, is just here as it starts to curve down into the dimple. And that's the strike. So again, keeping your posture nice and straight. I realise I slouched then. Keeping your instrument at a slight angle away from you. Striking at the angle that the note rests in general until you start to change your techniques a little bit. And keep your wrist raised so that you can relax onto the pan. And if you do all of these things, then by the very nature of what you're doing, you can flow really gently and with ease. So I recommend just trying different scales, different ways of practicing your scales with both hands. Maybe you can try doubles. I have got a video on my channel of practicing scales, so I recommend you check that out if you want to find new scale variations, threes, and so on and so forth. And again, as you do all of these things, check in with what your body is doing. Is there any tension anywhere in your feet, in your toes, in your shoulders, in your neck, in your hands? If you find that tension, slow your playing down, breathe, and then slowly build it back up again. Sometimes as we start to get quicker, we start to get tense. But actually what you want to aim for is getting looser as you get faster, because that's how you gain speed. So those are the very, very basics of striking your notes. We also have other sounds that we can explore. We've got slaps, right? Contrary to playing the notes, rather than using the very tip of my finger and only a small part, I use much more of my finger. I use my strongest finger. You could use two if you want to, but I tend to use my middle. And I'm playing with a little bit more force, and I'm sticking rather than bouncing. If I bounce, I don't get as much sound, but if I stick, much stronger. Now every pan is different. Some pans, for instance, if I play with my lovely stainless steel Meridian handpan, the slap sounds much more different. It really rings everywhere, right? So find a place that sounds good to you. sometimes it doesn't sound as clear. It's not as pretty. So if you want to get that nice, sharp, percussive sound, you want to find a spot that doesn't ring too much. You can also use your knuckles for this. I find that to be a really nice, gentle sound. You can use those on the notes as well. But all of the same things apply. So looseness, striking from the direction of the pan rather than from upwards, because that's not going to work out in the same way. So striking from that direction. Keeping your wrist raised so that you can relax into the pan, but you can have a little bit more force with those slap sounds. Checking in with your body, making sure your pan is angled correctly. And playing as relaxed as you possibly can. So those are the very, very, very basics of how I approach playing handpan. Everybody is different. I recommend checking out other teachers on YouTube here as well. There are also paid courses available that you can check out. But we will, in another video, have a look at different striking techniques as well. There's so many different ways that you can strike the handpan, and I'm sure there are so many more ways that nobody's figured out yet. That's the beauty of it. There's so many different sounds you can find in these instruments. It's incredible. So I challenge you to explore, find new sounds you're not used to playing, be silly, get creative, and have fun with it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm excited for your handpan journey. If you are new, if you're fresh, if you're a beginner, I wish you all the best with it. Yeah, please keep me updated as to how your journey is going. I love to hear about where everybody's at with their handpan playing. Everybody always has some wonderful stories. So I will leave it there, and I will wish you a lovely, lovely week, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much. See you soon.